All right. Hello, everybody. We are live with another deWiz Coaches webinar series here on the deWiz Golf YouTube and Facebook channels. Matt Lawrence with you, hosting once again as we get ready to welcome in our third guest of this series and our third episode of the Coaches webinar series. We've had Ben Pelicani, we've had Martin Hall, and now today we're having the longtime director of instruction from Sleepy Hollow Country Club, Kevin Sprecher, who's going to join us. He and Marcus are going to hop in here in just about a minute to talk about deWiz and how it can help simplify the coaching experience for coaches, teaching professionals, and students everywhere. So let's go ahead and welcome in Marcus and Kevin into the broadcast. There's Marcus and there's Kevin. Guys, how are we doing today? It's morning time here on the East Coast. And Marcus, I know it's the middle of the afternoon for you, getting ready for a big weekend, or a big week, I should say, at the PGA Sweden Summit.
Correct. Very good. Good to see you, Kevin.
Yeah, nice to see you guys. Marcus, Matt, good morning.
Good morning. So, Marcus, I'm just gonna kick it over to you. Let the professionals chat for a little bit, and I'll be back monitoring the chat. As always, if you have a question that you want to leave for Marcus or Kevin, feel free to leave it in the chat. Whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, you can leave it in the chat, and we'll get to it at the end of the conversation. Marcus, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Matt. So, Kevin, I'm going to start straight into it. What really drew your attention to deWiz in the first place?
Well, I just love tech. So that was anything that shows tech in golf is like going to catch my eye. And then, quite honestly, some of the players that you had using it, I'm like, oh, kind of caught my eye. So your marketing plan was working. It got me interested in it. And then once I saw what it can do, I was really interested because look, anything that can help me help my students get better faster, I'm interested in. And one of the things I liked about the deWiz was the immediate feedback. It wasn't do a swing, let it process, and then you have to look it up. It's do a swing, and there's the data right there. And then the data, the way the deWiz presents the data is very simple. It's there's only a few metrics that you can look at. It's very easy to read. I tested it against a few other things, and it was accurate. So then I kind of played around with it myself before I used it with my students, and I liked what I saw, and it actually helped me with my home game. So it was kind of nice.
Interesting.
And then the other thing I really liked about it was the feature where was the biofeedback feature, not the audio, which I always like audio, but was the electric shock. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you can change it, because I think some kind of a tactile feel as far as a response is helpful. I worked for Jim McLean for 25 years, and Jim always said that pain is the ultimate teacher. So not that this creates any pain, but you can actually set it to where, because I use it for the transition mode. If the hands are going out too much, you get a little jolt in your lead arm, which I like. So that that kind of stuff really interested me with it when I started to dive into it, because you never know what you're going to get with some of these things. It's not inexpensive, so I was hoping that it really worked. Sometimes there's some of these inexpensive products out there that don't work, or some expensive things that don't work. But your product is terrific.
Makes me happy to hear. Thanks so much. And talking about the jolt, the feedback, or what we call the learning stimuli, it's not supposed to be painful. It's supposed to be a reminder that goes straight into your brain or your brain stem, which processes these motor learning aspects and just gives a feedback that, okay, that's not what I wanted to do. Because when we developed, we actually had the idea that it was going to be more of a Pavlov's dog, Stephen Skinner, something, conditioning like that.
I should say it wasn't painful. It was startling at first. I played around with the settings until I found the setting that I was the most comfortable with. You'd asked what I had worked on it with my own swing, and I was just playing around with my hand path. If I, trying to feel this out or in a little bit, I can get a little out too much with my swing. And for me personally, when I get out a little bit, it's because my lower body actually gets a little bit late. So it helped me with that. I love how I can set parameters, from inside a certain parameter, that there's no feedback, and then if you're outside of those parameters, you get the feedback. So I love the flexibility of the software. For me as a coach, able to have control over what the parameters are. Sometimes you get devices and they set the parameters based on what tour players are doing, which is completely unrealistic when you're working with non-tour players all the time. So the flexibility to set up certain parameters within the system for what I want was really nice.
Interesting. Yeah, we always said that deWiz is not for a perfect swing; it's for your perfect swing, and we all have different setups, from the mental to the physical parts to everything, to our experience in the game. So, but we at deWiz, we like to talk about deWiz. Really, it targets 3 points of the game. Either you can hit the ball farther, so we go longer, straighter, of course, with the slice and everything, or closer with the wedge game. Would you say you use any of these 3 more than the others?
I use it more. I haven't used it much on the short game yet because I've only had the system in the wintertime. And so I haven't had the opportunity to use it too much in, with short game. So I primarily use it for full swing, and some other long swing stuff inside. I love the tempo feature. I do a lot with I love the avatar and how it traces the hand path or the path of the deWiz, which is on your lead arm. And so, if people don't know, it gives you one color going back, and then I think it's blue going back and green coming down. And I'm always trying to get those 2 lines fairly close together when I'm looking at it from the target line view. And when I'm looking at it from the face-on view, I actually try to get them a little bit wider apart. So the swing gets a little wide and then gets a little bit narrower coming down. So I look at those 2 things. More than actually I look at the numbers, I look at the graph, and I'm a graphs person. I love to see graphs. I think it helps people, someone can see the different, they don't know what the numbers mean, but they can see that their hands are going this way, going back, and then going a different direction, coming down, and they can see that. And then when we start getting into small changes, is when we go to the numbers. So I always get a baseline with everyone and say, okay, here's where you started, and here's where we are, and you can start to see the changes. And I've learned over the years that, look, having technology, I don't need to coach with technology. I coached in the early 90s. We didn't have a lot of this stuff. We didn't have launch monitors and deWizes and all this stuff because it wasn't available at video. But being able to use technology like the deWiz, it gives us data and it gives us a way to measure progress. Because students are like, oh, I'm not getting better. I'm like, well, actually, let's take a look at the data. You came back in your transition last week, you were 4 inches out from where you were going back, and now you're 2.6. That's a pretty good change. And then it kind of clicks in their mind, oh, I am getting better, or whatever. And it kind of, gets the student to believe in what we're doing a little bit better. And if someone believes in what you're doing, they're gonna, they're gonna retain it.
Absolutely. And I want to go back to that, talking about the graph and the trace lines, because I was going to ask you about that, because for one, I use the trace lines in my coaching quite a lot. I had the student look at the trace lines many times in the short game, just hitting a longer chip shot. And it's like, try to get them trace lines down the line view to cover each other. You don't want to chop and change in the short game, the trace lines. And if you can do it in the long game too, especially ending up at the impact pretty close to where you started, you're in a pretty good place. And interesting that you mentioned that the old wide to narrow on the face-on view that you can see as well in the trace lines.
Yeah, it's it is. It's like I said before, it's just very helpful to see that kind of stuff and to show it to my students. I don't have any particular traits that I'm looking for because every student swings a little bit different. And I try to get them not to manufacture the change with their arms. Anyone can go up and then drop their arms down, but you can't repeat that, over a period of time or even under pressure. And pressure could just be trying to execute a shot in a round or in a tournament. So I try to, I show them, look, if you do this with your body, your hands are going to react a certain way. And if you do it the way you're doing it, they're going to react that way. So I use my philosophy in teaching, which is, kind of focusing on the body to illustrate how it's going to change what your hands do. And then I use the deWiz to prove that I'm right.
Mm.
They don't have to believe me, but here's the tech. The tech's not going to lie.
That's exactly it. What do your students say? What's their feedback?
Their feedback is the first thing is like, oh, it's cool. Yeah, and that's the first comment everyone says. They like the fact that it's unobtrusive. A lot of people don't like to have an alignment rod to swing under or something. That they're afraid of hitting it. So to have the device on the wrist, which is very light, they don't, it doesn't bother them at all. They can actually play with it. Is nice for me because sometimes I use an alignment rod with a foam thing on it, but everyone's afraid to hit it, so they really avoid it more than make a swing change. And with the deWiz, they're not worried about it. So all the comments have been positive. When I first got it, again, I tested it against video because that's all I really had to test it against, and it matched up to what I expected to see and what I saw in the video. And for my students, one of my students actually won one. He was playing in I think it was an AJGA event in Orlando.
Notice event?
Yeah, or something. Yeah. And he won it in a raffle. Now, he wasn't the first winner, though. The first person who won it wasn't there. Second person who wasn't there. He was like the fifth person. Finally, somebody, so he ended up getting it. Shows up to his lesson with this thing. I'm like, the deWiz. I'm like, how'd you get that? I've been waiting for mine. Mine's coming from Europe. And I am looking forward to using it with the short game. I really think it's gonna. We've spoken before, and I've watched some of the videos on it, and that's where I'm really interested in seeing how it's going to help people, because the short game is such an important part of the game for people. My feeling is most golfers can get the ball within 50 yards of the green in 2 shots on a par 4, 3 shots on a par 5. But from 50 yards, they can't get it down to 3 shots.
Yeah.
And it's usually something with disconnection in their arms and trying to do whatever. So I'm really interested to see and learn more about how the deWiz is going to help and help them focus and improve.
Yeah, and what's really interesting here, what I see, I use it a lot in the short game, and there's a huge change between the better players, I'm not going to say elite players, but better club golfers and more of beginner golfers. It's a tempo. It's a huge change, especially in the short game. Generally swinging back too slowly and jerking it coming down. And we're looking at the greats like Annika, who's at the 2-to-1 tempo, the pendulum tempo. And some are way higher than that, and it's getting jerky.
And when you have your students who are going back too slowly, is there a common cause for that? Like, are they just not sure how far they hit the ball, so they're hesitant, or their technique is wrong? What do you find?
I find that they're over controlling it. That they're trying to go, if I go really, really slow, I'm going to feel so comfortable that I can do nothing wrong, but I have to get back to the ball and go, ugh. I think it's more of a psychomechanical thing than anything else.
Gotcha. Because I typically see where a lot of players, since they don't know how far they hit the ball, they get quick. Let me get it over with and go as fast as I can and see or they get fast going back and then they decelerate.
Oh, yeah.
Is what I see a lot because most, and I think that's where most amateurs struggle. And it's not, some of it's because they don't know the technique. But a lot of it is they just don't know how far they hit the ball.
Yeah.
And I think when I work with my elite players, it's they know exactly, they have a 56-degree wedge. They know what the flight's going to look like. They know how the ball is going to land on the green, and they can see it going because they've hit it 100,000 times.
Yeah.
Your average golfer, one is all they do is hit drivers on the range. And when they go to the short game, they take their 60-degree wedge and they hit little shots here and there, and they don't know what they're doing. They just kind of go over there because they feel like they need to do it.
They don't want to do it, but they have to do it.
Yeah, they have to do it. So so I'm really looking. We're almost outside here. We actually hit balls outside for the first time the other day. It was 65 degrees here. Now it's back down to 40 and freezing, but and it's actually heard it's going to snow on Wednesday. But we're getting close. Hopefully the end of the month we'll be back outside. Yeah.
And another thing you're probably going to see in the short game that you have seen all your life, I'm sure, is too big swings too close to the green.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's why because they're using the 60 degree. They got to make a big swing to hit it a little distance, and that's not comfortable. It's the short game, especially chipping, is one of the unique areas where the closer you get to the green, the less loft you might use. Especially if you have a lot of green to work with. And you may be 3 or 4 steps off the green and you have a 7-iron, which doesn't make sense to most people because, well, if I'm close to the green, why would I use a lob wedge? But everyone likes the ball. Everyone likes to see the ball go in the air. No one likes to see it roll.
No, got to be fast.
And I think if they went to a high level event, whether it be a collegiate event or a tour event, I think they'd see the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah. They hit the drivers really high, not low, and they hit their chips really low, not high. I think it's pretty amazing and seeing that. If you watch some of the tour data, you watch these guys, they're hitting it 150 feet in the air with a driver.
Yeah.
Which used to be unheard of. And they're hitting it down here really low with a wedge. Yeah. So I am excited to get outside and test it out and use it out there.
Looking forward to your feedback, Kevin. Do we have any questions, Matt, from the audience?
We do. We have a couple questions that came in. First, Peter Dahlberg, Peter asks, "Hi, Kevin. If my tempo is 3-1 with a total start to impact time of 1.15 seconds, should I speed up my downswing or speed up my backswing?" And this can go to Marcus or Kevin. And Kevin, I think, the more important piece of this question is, where are you looking at those tempo numbers? And are there specific data points? Are you looking at the start to impact total time, the ratio? How do you digest that number?
So I'm looking at everything. I'm also looking at the player because, is he 6'5" with clubs that are an inch long, or is he 5'8" with clubs that are half an inch short? So it's going to be, the tempo is going to be a little bit different depending upon the player. Guys like, who are short, quick players with little shorter swings, like a John Rahm, he's going to have a quicker tempo than an Adam Scott.
Yep.
So the tempo is player dependent. The 1 second from address to impact, or the 0.9, or the 3-1, the ratio stays the same. His backswing might be, 0.9 going back and 0.3 coming down, and that might be his 3-1 ratio. So if you can ask him how tall he is, that would help. But that's how I kind of look at it. And then I look at, is the player, we call him like a resistor type, like a Jason Day, the shorter, quicker tempoed kind of players, or is he more of a long, smooth swing type? So I try to match up the ratio, not the ratio, but the numbers, the backswing, the downswing time to their body style and to their swing type. That's kind of how I approach it.
Yeah, exactly. And I would say that if you have a 3-1 tempo, your timing is probably pretty good. And if you want to hit it farther, you could shorten that start to impact time, the total time, but make sure that your ratio stays the same, because that's basically your rhythm.
Yeah.
One other question we have coming in from Richard Goldberg. He says, what are your thoughts about using the hand speed metrics? So what are your thoughts about using the hand speed metrics for people looking to gain distance? Is that something you're paying much attention to as far as the hand speed curve on the deWiz app, or where do you see that number playing into, getting more distance off the tee?
So for me, look, hand speed is important. If the hands are moving faster, the club's moving faster. Now, how you move the hands faster is important. Are you just trying to move your hands faster, or are you using your body to move it faster? So I'll play around with that with a player. Obviously, that's only one component to distance. Mm-hmm. If we're talking about drivers, you actually have, how much dynamic loft are you applying? How much dynamic loft are you applying to the ball? What's your angle of attack, launch and spin? I mean, all those other things come into play. But if we're just talking about pure speed, hand speed's important. You're not going to find bombers with slow hand speeds.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
And what we've seen is that on an individual basis, if your hand speed goes up, it's very, very likely that your club head speed goes up.
Absolutely. That's all of our viewer questions that we've had today. Marcus, you have anything else to wrap up here before we let Kevin get on with his day? I know he has a busy day ahead.
Yeah, just one more question that I like to ask everybody, and it's a little tricky, but can you say that you've learned anything new from using deWiz?
Learned anything new
About the
be more specific.
about correlation.
Swing.
Yeah.
I'd have to think about that. I don't think anything offhand comes to mind. Like I said, oh wow, that's pretty interesting. I didn't see that coming.
Cool. Because I just say for me that the length of backswing for people, any kind of golfer who wants to hit it farther, increasing their length of backswing has been extremely helpful. And I didn't think that before I started with deWiz. And if someone would told me that 6 months ago, I would be like, maybe, but I can't talk against the data.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that, but I don't know if that was new to me.
No, I just think, but for me it was new.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, so yeah, I just think it's just helped me be a better. It's just helped me coach better. It's like I said, a player does a swing, I have the data, and then once I know what the player is, the player can take it and go. What I like is the player can go practice by themselves, but they're practicing correctly, and they can hit a shot and they know what to look for, and they can see what how the numbers change, so they know they're making a change, or if the numbers aren't changing enough or getting worse, they can contact me right away. And I think the ease of use of the device is one of the great aspects to it. Look, accuracy is obviously important, and I believe it's accurate. But the fact that I can give it to, if Matt was my student, I can show it to him in the lesson. I can work with him with it, and then I can give it to him to go practice with. And I know he's not going to be befuddled on how to use it. He knows that the data's there. It's just, look, you strap it on, you connect it, you do your things, and we set it up, and you go practice. And the numbers just pop up there. I love how it records it so I can see the data afterwards, and we can compare things. You can set best swings. So that to me, so I'm not really answering your question, but it's helping me in other ways, where it's helping me have my students practice better with what we want them to do. And when my students get better faster, that just, everybody's happy.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, Kevin, thanks so much for taking the time out of your morning to join us. We really appreciate the time. We really appreciate everything you had to say this morning. This was a very interesting conversation, and we'll let you get out of here. Enjoy the rest of the day, and let's hopefully get some nice weather up there in New York so you can get out on the course.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Marcus and Matt, thank you for having me on. Thank you for all your support with the device, and I look forward to future collaborations with you guys.
Thanks so much, Kevin. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Kevin.